Join me now, Tony Kinnett, national correspondent for the Daily Signal, host of the Tony Kinnett Cast. Tony, good to see you again. Thanks for being with us.
John, always good to see you, my man.
So I want your take here. Unfettered. You and I spent, 8-9 days together in Israel back in August. And this really incursion into Iran has nothing to do with Israel. They happen to be our ally here in the invasion. Lay it out. What do you see?
I think it's a brilliant move. Last couple of days, we've kind of tracked as everyone in the administration aligned behind the phrase "for the last 47 years." We also got to see Marco Rubio lay out a very clear point of order that the Iranians have imprisoned U.S. citizens. We always seem to forget about that the Iranians have just had the wherewithal, the freedom, so to speak, to just grab any U.S. citizen or U.S. Affiliate ally off the streets and throw them in jail forever, ad nauseum for the end. And that the United States taking this to them is a fantastic thing, regardless of whatever Israel decides to do. It's a 47-year war that is now being ended by the president. Excellent stuff. Number two, the huge amount of support from around the world, including moderate Muslim countries who are standing behind the United States as Iran flails around throwing missiles at whomever they just, in a last desperate attempt to hold on to power. And they're hitting a lot of their own supposed allies, upsetting Qatar, which is hilarious to watch. And I mean hilarious to watch not because of the missiles that are flying into residential areas, hilarious in the kind of cosmic sense of the one group that you really shouldn't be throwing missiles at is exactly who you're throwing missiles at. And then, of course, I'm watching a lot of my former friends and colleagues that are currently sitting in operator chairs this morning that are in the virtual cockpits of MQ-9 Reapers, of MQ-1C Gray Eagles, drones, seeing them strike all of these Iranian missile sites before they can even get the missile off of the low boy. That's a very good thing. This American dominance, I love it. We're seeing Trump do even more than we thought possible with this air campaign than in the Gulf War.
What about the 3 fighter jets that the so-called Kuwait air defenses sat down? I mean, it's horrible. They shoot down 3 of our F-16 fighters, friendly fire. Like, what the hell's up with that?
So a couple of things there. First of all, the current state of air defense systems, it's very, very diverse. Right now, you've got LSAD, you have energy weapon systems, you have short SAM systems like short air rocket systems, all of these different ways that we can use to try to keep air defenses up to date. The problem is when you have a bunch of different countries that have a bunch of different little pocket air defenses from lots of different eras, you need enough communication, especially redundant communication systems where, hey, I'm taking off every single gun, rocket, laser, whoopee cushion, whatever you've got out there, point it down. Don't fire right now. And unfortunately, what we've seen from a lot of our allies who have been totally assuring us they are of the best quality ever, we're seeing that no, they aren't. And they fire at anything that moves because they haven't put the right people of training in place. And it is a horrible situation. Thank God those pilots are safe and they've ejected safely. Obviously, of course, we grieve for the 4 who have been lost so far in this conflict. But the friendly fire incidents are, well expected, still ridiculous.
Pete Hegseth today saying that their goal is to sink the entire Iranian navy so it no longer exists, take out all of their missiles so they no longer exist, and basically to take out their intelligence infrastructure, though that no longer exists. That's a pretty big task, Tony. I mean, you served in the Middle East. You get these forever wars. You serve very, very heroically. What do you make of that statement?
Well, I'd push back on that, not out of modesty, but contracting work is done because they pay very nicely. I certainly would never point myself on the same pedestal as those who valiantly served for a much smaller paycheck under Uncle Sam's flag specifically. But I do want to make this clear because you and I talked about this when we were over in the Middle East again. Nothing would be finer than watching yet another Iranian Navy be the first country on earth to have 100% of its fleet stationed at the bottom of the ocean. I would love to see it. I would love to see the spirit of Ronald Reagan whispering from on high into Trump's ear that every boat be sunk from rowboat to pseudo battleship. Ha ha. To that, of course, their missile infrastructure is a bit harder to get everything in because you can stick a semi-trailer with a missile on the back and a suspension system into a decently carved out mountain. And the Iranians have lots of those. But what we've seen so far from the Israeli Defense Force, the Israeli Air Force, and of course our phenomenal United States military under contracting partners, is that the guys coming out of the caves have about 15 seconds before you experience an air-to-ground missile right up your backside. And so right now, that's a huge challenge from the president, but we've got a lot of guys that are up to the task. And that's a phenomenal thing to see. It makes my American heart beat with pride.
Tony Kinnett with us, national correspondent for the Daily Signal, host of the Tony Kinnett cast. Tony, what's the end game?
I believe the end game is a kind of civilian uprising that is a moving target. The moving target here is whether we see the proper groups that would like to see this regime overturned either create a new republic for the entire Iran, or at least Iran split in half and new governments rise up. Obviously, there's a question of the Kurds in the western portion of the country and the eastern edge of Iraq. We have the Crown Prince wanting to return. There's Mike Pompeo's communist Marxist group. I wish I was joking that he's supporting, that he's thrown his weight behind, that's announced they're ready to do some things. Now is the time when we actually need to see the civilian people rise up and do the work. Hegseth said this morning, no boots on the ground. I would love to, John, you and I make a business in saying what we want the end game to be or want the future to be, but also a bit of realism here. And you obviously knowing so in the way you asked the question, whether or not we see an end game here that is brought about to the freedom of the people depends on the people of Iran, the people of Persia. And so my steadfast prayer is that we keep our troops safe, we maintain air dominance over the region, we give our boys some flight and drone practice, and then in the meantime, we encourage the citizens to, as much as I despise 20th century terminology, embrace self-determination.
But they don't have any guns. The problem is they don't have any weapons. All the weapons are in the hands of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard that is still aligned. They haven't put their weapons down like President Trump asked. They're still aligned with the theocratic ayatollahs, and they're just going to get a new leader. They haven't put their weapons down, and the Iranian people have no guns. So how do you get this kind of change?
So you can do it a couple different ways. You can encourage a Middle Eastern power, let's say Saudi Arabia, to start pushing guns into the country. You can drop a little friendly care package of guns over pockets of resistance that have taken small towns. We've seen that before. Or my personal favorite, you can encourage one of our key allies in the region essentially to set up a hard point, let's say on the Strait of Hormuz itself. And you say, okay, tell you what, we're going to give you all of these weapons. You start handing them out at the door like Halloween candy. That's a way to arm the civilian population. Any of those ways are ready to go, but the civilian populace, once they take over some of these military caches that are currently starting to feel the strain of disorganization and fear, once a couple of those turn, I think you're going to see a much more armed populace.
Tony, tell me about this Mike Pompeo-backed group who you said are communist.
Yeah, so Mike Pompeo got out on the social media, and I'm going to pull up the exact quote here so I make sure that I have this correct. Mike Pompeo got out in front of kind of the broader social media sphere and announced a particular group he called a democratic group, which is actually a openly Marxist and communist group. It's the Provisional Government by the National Council of Resistance of Iran, run by Maryam Rajavi. She is a Marxist and an open Marxist as well. And of course, Mike Pompeo quote tweeted her and said, Iran's democratic opposition is ready to step up and lead. The MEK, or the NCRI, has a very violent terrorist history, including attacks on American targets in the 70s and 80s. So only Mike Pompeo could be this stupid. They have no legitimate support among the Iranians. He's like, oh, a communist group calling themselves democratic. Oh, quick, Martha, we're going all in.
What about the Shah's son?
It's a little more difficult to say whether or not he's going to make landfall in the country safely. So there is a technical fourth option in arming the civilian populace. The man shows up, he lands in Iranian airspace, he lands in a town or a small region that's already been taken, and then he brings a lot of arms with him. The man's quite wealthy. You know, bring a couple of Kalashnikovs, bring a couple of M4s. I don't recommend M4s, but, you know, you bring along a couple of fine rootin' tootin' instruments, and then you conquer the rest of the country. He appears to be doing the I'm going to wait until I'm called for move. That's quite the gamble, nod to your earlier segment there. I'm not quite sure that he's going to be able to play it off. He really wants to. He's announced a 6-month plan of how he's going to in essence, denazify the Iranian people. We'll see. Anyone can get up there and proclaim themselves to be king. Anyone can don the Burger King crown. But alas, unless you're able to carry out the policies and have people that are willing to say, yeah, let's go, let's march, my liege, I'm still waiting. I'm not kind of putting too many trusts in his chariots.
Tony, what's the most likely scenario in your judgment?
I think the most likely scenario is one that we've seen a little bit like in Venezuela, where you have a regime that essentially says, okay, we give up uncle, as it were, and allows the perhaps a provisional act. There's going to have to be some type of surency of the real, of their currency. We're actually going to need to see there be some kind of economic incentive for Iran to afford bread and water. And so in those instances, you need a currency to exchange with, unless they're going to get out there and start trading in silver and ammunition, those being my preferences. So in this instance, I think the most likely scenario is that at some point the administration says, all right, fine. And they start working like the Venezuelans. I'd say that's probably a 65, 70% likely outcome here. I would say also very high likely is that the Kurd region, or at least southern Iran, splits away.
Tony, will this effort divide the MAGA movement?
No. I mean, we've heard this before, right? I mean, goodness gracious, you and I have laughed about this before. This idea, oh man, no, everyone's going to suddenly stop trusting President Trump. And then we looked at the polls after 4-0, and it was more support than there had ever been. It was incredibly supportive. Again, as someone who spends a lot of his time looking at the pseudo MAGA, they're not populists, they're nutcases that are botting their own work. And by the way, I'm not saying that as a thrown insult. I've spoken to the actual botters that do the coding over on Black Hat World Forum, who've coded for Candace, who've coded for Tucker. You can scream all you want, but a bunch of Pakistani accounts who are bolstering your views is not going to split the MAGA movement. In fact, it's starting to fizzle.
You're so right. They're so ridiculous. I was just telling Schlapp, there's a handful of them that have an outsized voice, and they make a lot of money off clicks. And, now we find out that, half their stuff is bots. That's basically it. I mean, it's just like, you think I get up every day and I give a rat's ass what Tucker Carlson says, or Candace Owens, or Megyn Kelly. I could care less. These are all clickbaiters, Alex Jones, all of them. It's basically an internet clown show as far as I'm concerned. Tony, I'm going to give you the final word I got to get out. Wrap this for us.
You got it. Here's the final word here. The American people are tired of Iran. They like seeing American troops blow up their enemies. They like seeing America respected. They like it when Donald Trump cooks and he comes out with a great recipe. Seems to be another case here. It's what they voted for. I'm thrilled to see it. Praying for our troops. God bless this country. Gentlemen, start your engines.
And sink the Navy. I like what you said. Sink every last boat down to their rowboats. Just
every rubber ducky dinghy, every one of them.
Sink every one of them, and then laugh when they're on the bottom of the ocean. And then they have no Navy. Like, just sink them all. Has that ever been done?
Twice. Sorry. You mean just in the general? Well, the French technically scuttled most of their Navy when they surrendered to the Nazis. Have you ever seen any country completely lose every last boat? Well, we're about to.
Tony, thanks for being with us. People want to follow you. Get the rowboats sunk and all those stupid speedboats. Remember the hostages they took on their speedboat or something, and what was it? John Kerry was like kneeling to them or something. Remember that? Oh my God. I do.
And unfortunately for them, a lot of Americans remember it too. And the chickens are coming home to roost.
Totally. Tony, people want to follow you. Where do they go?
You can go on X at TheTonus, TheTonus, or YouTube over at dailysignal.com. Otherwise, if you're in our radio syndication network like you, John, they already know.
Thank you. Thank you, Tony. Thanks for being with us. Quick word from our sponsors when I get back. Rabbi Yaakov Menken and Paul Teller were going to be with us. Plus your calls. I'm going to open this segment for your calls. 888-480-JOHN, 888-480-5646. Talked a lot since you're my last caller, so let's get back to calls, see what you guys think.